podcast, A Penny for Your Thoughts with me, Steve Penny. Over the coming weeks, I'm going to be talking to some great people. I hope you enjoy listening in. Thank you. Good morning, Chris. Thanks for coming along today. I'm looking forward to talking to you. If you wouldn't mind just giving us a brief intro of who you are and what you do, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, morning, Steve. Pleasure to pop in and have a chat with you. I'm Chris Perrins. I'm a director at Radleb at Bucknell, Christchurch. I've been a conservator for the last 32 years, or thereabouts, and formerly worked for Sheffield City Council for 22 years back in the UK. Before moving out to New Zealand, spent the last 10 years here, and we'll spend the next 10 or more years here, I dare say.
What about your personal life? Married, children?
Yes, I am married. Unfortunately, separated at the moment.
Okay.
But,
sorry.
Yeah. 2 kids, Daisy and Lily. Teenagers.
That'll be challenging.
It's, to be honest, yes. Only in my mind, really, because they're great kids, but as a parent of daughters, you worry a little bit.
Yes. Well, having 2 daughters myself, I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, absolutely.
There are a few challenges.
and they are polar opposite characters as well. So you've got the full range there, but no, they're great kids, and they certainly do bring a huge amount of enjoyment to my life.
That's good to hear. They do have their upsides for kids as well. I think it's, I wouldn't change my kids for the world. There've been challenges as they've been through their teenage years, but now they're all sort of young adults. There's lots more to enjoy about them, I think.
Absolutely, different things.
Different things, definitely.
And it's always going to be challenging, and the challenges change as they grow older. But I joke about it a lot, that the things that they do or how difficult it is, but only as a joke, because really it's great. An absolute pleasure.
Well, you've got to be nice to your kids, because they're going to choose your old person's home that you live in. So you've got to be good to
well, you're right there. I probably should have put more thought into that, actually.
You've been a QS for your entire working career?
I have. I've only had 2 jobs, yeah.
So how did you start down that path? Because I don't remember that being an option when I was at school.
I don't think it ever is, because no one would choose it if it was. I think if you asked any QS, certainly the majority of them would probably say that it's not a career that you choose, it chooses you, that you end up falling into it. I think most of the QSs I know fall into it by going down a certain path or not knowing what to do, and then they end up there. I certainly was that. I went all the way through sixth form not knowing what I was going to do, getting to the end of sixth form and thinking, cracky, I'll have to do something here, because and get something sorted out. So I ended up, one of my friends at school had been enrolled in a university course to do estate surveying, actually, and it was just the word surveying that I sort of latched onto and looked around at what the possibilities were around that career. I decided to enrol on a full-time course. Thought, I'll give that a crack. It's got good at maths. Obviously, there's lots of maths involved in QSing, so I thought, let's give that a crack. Got enrolled on that course, and then a few weeks later, noticed there was a job going at Sheffield Council, and they were going to pay for me to do the course and work 4 days a week.
Excellent.
Extra year at university, but whilst you're getting paid, you're going to complain at that. So ended up going to Nottingham Trent, like a lot of good QSs
did. So you in high school, so you were lots of maths and sciences side of high school?
Physics,
Maths and physics,
they were my A levels.
I'm surprised, because I was horrible at maths and hated physics. And I've ended up doing a job that requires both. I suppose I was always heading in that direction. I'm not the sort of arts side of things. A lot more of the logical sort of brain. So I'm not arty at all. I did technical drawing in my last year at high school, and I absolutely hated it. And again, it's like, how have I ended up doing this job? Because it's just.
I wonder how many people do sit down and go, I wonder how I got here. I wonder how I got.
Well, that's part of the interest in these conversations I'm having, is that people just, you hear some of the stories and you think, well, you've gone from there. How did you get? It's just like, there's no straight line.
No, I think, but I mean, for me, progress thing is probably a bit boring because once I fell into that, I never deviated from it. And one of my characteristics is do everything to the best of your ability all the time. So if I started on something, I didn't want to fail in it. I wanted to make sure I did my very best, and then it just rolls on from there.
Absolutely. So 22 years at the council.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that was a sentence. No, look, I loved it. It was great.
Yeah. What kind of projects were you working on?
Well, initially in the early 90s, there was a lot around the housing redevelopment. Right. Sheffield's got a massive housing, or it had a massive housing stock, so we were doing a lot of work renovating those houses. It was okay. It got me into the role, but fortunately saved by the Millennium funding that came around and the investment that was put into the city centre itself. Mm-hmm. So I ended up working on some great projects there, the Millennium Gallery, the Millennium Winter Gardens, Millennium Square, landscaping. Projects that were in many ways sort of statement projects for that size anyway, and it was completely different to what we'd worked on before, and as a team we really got stuck into those and got something out of it. And latterly, after that dried up, I was heavily involved in setting up the consortium of consultants in Yorkshire called Your Hub, which allowed councils and other public bodies to tap into a panel that were already pre-qualified, had already had rates agreed. So managing that and going around the various places, informing people about that was pretty good towards the end of my career there. 22 years is a long time to stay somewhere.
Big change to move to New Zealand. So what kind of prompted that move?
Well, I'd probably gone 5 years too long where I was. And I was becoming increasingly frustrated with the organisation as a whole. I worked with some great people, heavily influenced by my former boss, Chris Jackson, and Neil Stanley also. They were great people to learn from, doing things the right way. And I tried to take that on and pass that kind of knowledge on. But within that organisation, I'd gone as far as I could go. And I was getting more negative every day I went to work. Or I was feeling more negative. I need to get out. At the time, there wasn't a great deal going off in the construction industry around Yorkshire. There was a couple of avenues I could have probably gone down, but I felt I'd just reached the end of the line. I wanted something bigger. I say bigger. It's not the job specifically, but more something different. You know. And what do you do? You reach a point. Do you change career? You know. But we've been doing it for 22 years. You know. You're 40 years old. It's like, all right, I could retrain, but then you're taking a step back. You progress so far. Everybody's gone through this, I'm sure. You know, what do you do? So then you just start looking further afield. Construction industry 10 years ago in the UK, generally speaking, wasn't brilliant.
No, it's kind of the GFC was in full flow at that point, I would guess.
It was in the back end of that, and there was not really any signs of anything that took me interest really. And we just talked, Sarah and I, and we decided that we'd look even further afield. You know, where could we go? Is it a possibility? Because I think, particularly coming from, I don't know whether you could tell from my accent from the north of England. I'm doing my best posh accent, to be honest, for this. I think there's there can be quite a sort of an insular view, and I'm just saying it's North England. It's probably in a lot of cities and towns in the UK. There's an insular view that this is where you stay, this is what you do, and you go away on holiday once a year, and that kind of thing wasn't working for us anymore. Right. You know, we were kind of thinking
getting itchy feet.
And I never thought I would be someone who would be like that, because I never really could contemplate that kind of a move, but we spoke about it. Friends of ours had moved over here about 18 months prior. A guy who used to work with Sean, he moved over and works here, and the feedback was that it's a great life, and that it's more than just the work, and there's more possibilities here, and it's great for bringing up kids. And at the time, our two kids were 7 and 5. The kind of ideal age for them moving, really, because any longer and they would have got too embedded in the school and the friends and what have you, and it was just at that right time, and it's kind of a now or never.
So we made the mistake, because our eldest was 12 when we moved over, and she was just started at grammar school in the UK and was absolutely loving it. And it took her a long time to forgive us for taking her out of grammar school and bringing her here. I mean, because I think the other thing that we found, and I don't know if your kids found it, is that the education over here was a little bit slower starting, and they were kind of in the front end of the classes all the time. But it's good, great education. It just seems to start a bit slower.
It's very different though, and I struggled to get my head around how they were being taught. and methods that weren't sat in a classroom with a teacher at the front telling everyone to be quiet and you're getting on with your work, because that's how
we were taught.
Exactly, yeah. Well, what's wrong with that?
Slippers flying, exactly, running shoes right at your head, and rulers, and
But they seem to take to it, and fair play.
Yeah.
But you're right. I think it was Daisy ended up in the year that she was probably, because of her birthday, and it's not how we would have normally slotted into a school year. She ended up being one of the youngest in the year by quite a margin.
Yeah.
With people in her year that are a year older than her, which is strange, but yeah, they're doing great. Yeah. I've never once said a bad thing about it.
No, I think that's the younger two were fine, but so 10 and 8 or 9 and 7, somewhere around there they were when we moved over, so they kind of just were okay. But yeah, Caitlin really struggled for the first few years over here, because she struggled to get into a friend group because she was just that little bit older, and those groups are well established. And I think that's probably one small regret, but overall it's been good, I think.
Yeah. How long have you been in now?
I got here in 2010. What about greatest achievements in your career? If you were going to focus on something that you think that you look back on and you're really proud of, what would you say that was?
It's a difficult one, because as a QS, it's largely a thankless task. And
you either get the price right and everyone says you've just done your job, or you get the price wrong and you're wrong.
Correct. That's very much it. So if you rely... Certainly I found if you need that kind of affirmation through those sorts of achievements, then QSing is not the career for you. No. You have to take things out of what you do on a more micro level and have, I think, satisfaction from that rather than an achievement. So I get great satisfaction out of mentoring.
Well, that's equally valid, though. That's something that's important to do. I think there's not enough of it going on, that we're relying on other people to train the people we work with, and we need to take that responsibility ourselves.
I noticed many years ago that the university syllabus, and I'll talk about the UK, changed quite a lot and took the focus a lot away from the basics of construction and measurement, which for a QS, you might not end up measuring schedules and quantities all the time anymore, but it teaches you how a building goes together.
It's the foundation.
Go into it, exactly. Yeah, no pun intended.
Yeah.
The problem these days I see is that they try to teach the students more about the holistic industry and maybe just the parts of it that you would get to eventually. They skip over the
basic stuff.
The basic stuff, the beginnings that everybody needs. And I think I lectured at ARA for a couple of semesters, and I found it quite frustrating that the students that were coming in, they were already mentally thinking that they're
running a QS firm.
Exactly. This is where I'm going to be next year, sort of thing. And I'm thinking, hang on a minute, you sat playing on your phone while we're learning this stuff. Poor generalisation, but that's what it felt like.
Yeah.
So I ended up stopping doing the lecturing, and I spoke to her and said, look, I think the best way I can give back to and sort of help these students is to have them into the office, give them the real work experience, and then get them to see things actually happening, which I think benefits them far, far more than me standing in front of them for 3 hours moaning about how rubbish the syllabus is.
Probably not the best teaching method.
Well, I have strengths, and maybe that's not one of them.
No. It's on a similar vein. I was asked by UC to come in and be a sort of industry mentor for a couple of semesters for the CNRE students, so the Civil Natural Resource Engineering students. And I actually really enjoyed doing that. I was pretty nervous starting off, but they were actually quite willing to listen to how projects were set up and going back to the basics of how you run things and what stuff you need to look out for. And that was quite... it was quite an eye-opener for me to see the students actually really engaged in that process. I think that's something we need to do more of, because I get frustrated, it's probably the same as you do, when you get graduates coming in, you think they're going to be running the place in 10 minutes and want to be paid an absolute fortune when they know nothing and can do nothing. It's just like... I think back, I hark back to my starting salary, and I'm embarrassed to say, but when I started work at the ripe old age of 16, and I remember this to the pound, I was earning £2,338 a year.
Yeah.
Less than £200 a month.
Yeah.
It's like,
God, that was a good wage. Well done.
Yeah, so it's a long time ago. It's a long time ago now.
It is.
So let's talk about something else. Is there a point in time where you actually learnt something or heard something from somebody that actually changed your perspective on people around you, on the job you do?
I can't think of one specific instance where that was the case, where it was like a light bulb moment or something. Right. I think the key to any personal development and professional development is to take little bits as you go along.
Yep.
So they're not like groundbreaking things, but you learn from those people who you respect. You take little bits from managers you've had before. You take those bits or something that they've said, you think, actually, that works with my philosophy in terms of getting on in life and work. So I don't think there's a specific one, but I think it's more of a hard work has always been in my veins, if you like. It's work hard, don't leave anything wanting.
Yeah.
Put it all in there. And then, if it doesn't work, you can go, well, at least I tried my best. That's definitely something that I say to the kids. Lily's a great netball player. I said, look, just go out there, give your best. I said, don't worry that you're up against grown-up women, who are going to push you around. Just go out, do your best. Yeah. And if you come off and go, I couldn't have done any more, then that's all I can ask you. You know.
It's the same in every walk of life, I think. If you put your best effort in, people can see you putting your best effort in for a start, and you don't leave anything on the table. It's all used up, then that's the best you can do. And if it's not enough, then that's fine, because you've tried your best, as you say. But I think there's a large proportion of society that thinks that just enough is good enough, and that's why we've got some of the issues we've got in society at the moment, that people want something for nothing all the time.
Yeah, I think the kind of 80% enough, will get us through. I don't mind about that. It's not a good way to.
Yeah, that's a particular issue in the construction industry in this country, I think, is that there's the standards set very low, and we struggle to achieve it sometimes. I keep using this adage that we set the bar really low and then we trip over it, which I think is unfortunately happens quite commonly. In terms of things that have changed over your career in QSing, have you seen, probably like me, you've seen a massive change in the amount of technology that we use to do the work? Do you see any particular concerns with the reliance on the technology?
Yes, most definitely. The word is reliance.
Yeah.
A lot of what we do, both in your part of the industry and my part, is checking.
Yep.
It's making sure that what we are putting forward is right, that someone else has had a look at it, and you understand how you've got to where you've got to. You haven't just put a number in and then another number's come out the other end, and then that's the answer. It's how have we got to that answer? When someone asks you how you've got to that answer,
can you actually answer the question?
Exactly. Can you explain to somebody how that's critical. I'm not anti-technology at all, but I think this, coupled with what we were speaking about earlier, about perhaps people coming through without that basic knowledge of knowing what that computer is trying to do.
Knowing what the answer should look like, and then recognising it when it looks wrong that's something I think I try to get through to the people that I mentor as well, is you've got to have an idea what range you're looking at for the number that comes out. So if it comes out with a really weird number, you spot it, and then you go back and see where's the error.
Correct.
And usually the error's in you somewhere. Usually. It's not usually in the software.
Well, no, it'll have done exactly what you've told it to whether or not you knew you were telling it to it or not.
Have you seen much in the way of the AI stuff coming through?
Personally, no. But I have to say that I am slowly getting into that bracket of older professionals that you want to learn, you want to know what's going on, but you haven't got the time to be able to bring yourself up to speed on those sorts of things, and you end up having to rely on other people in the organisation and delegate that responsibility. Yeah. Because the temptation is to go, no, I want to do it. I want to, and then you just, these days, you just cannot get into it in that much detail to be able to sort of fully take it on board. So you have to use other people to do that. And And fortunately, we've got Tom in the office who does all that for us, understands it all on our behalf.
And then explains it in one syllable words. For us old people who can't really work it out.
I mean, in terms of the sort of day-to-day from QSing perspective, it hasn't changed a great deal. The capabilities of the systems and the software obviously has improved, although there are still those in our office that are still using blue screen technology and DOS-based
really?
stuff.
Oh my God.
I will not name them for fear of reprisal. But yeah, there's things that can be done. Obviously, you've got a lot greater.
Yeah.
I do actually think largely, like I said, with the older generation, if you like, there is, I don't say a resistance to that change. I think there is definitely resistance in some quarters, but it's just we're too far out of it now to sort of...
Starting to look at towards the end of your career rather than the beginning.
And that's it, yeah. I mean, I turned, it's not that old, but I turned 50 last year, and it's the first time that I've actually thought about, retirement. When is retirement?
Yeah.
Obviously it's not imminent.
Well, not with two teenage kids who want to go to university.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, 55 on Friday last week, so a few years ahead of you. And that retirement focus is getting stronger, I have to say. I'm certainly of a mind that I don't want to work into my 70s. My real focus at the moment is I want to retire as soon as I can, and I'm sort of thinking 5 years' time that I'd retire, because I think we need to enjoy our lives, and working is part of it, but also there's got to be stuff outside of work, and Chrissy and I, my wife and I, want to travel, and we don't want to be restricted to 2 or 3 weeks at a lump every year. We want to be able to travel whenever we want, and that has some certain financial requirements that we're nowhere near meeting right now. Because like most people my age, pension was something I was going to invest in later, and it's got to later and I haven't invested in it yet. So
well, I had originally got a good pension because I worked at the council, which was a final salary back then. But obviously I had to cash that in to move over here. So so I'm in the same boat. Now I'm looking to think, right, what do I want to do when I retire, and how do I manage that? But it's a strange thing when a lot of my life has been day to day, week to week, to then looking that far ahead for...
I think that's something that we could all learn from, really, is having that end goal in mind, even if it is 10 or 15 years away, actually allows you to focus more on what you're doing day to day, because you know where you want to get to, and you look at what am I doing now, and is it getting me closer to that or further away from that, and then you can start to focus and change your path so you end up where you want to be.
I think it's a good way of looking at it. I mean, as you get older, as everybody knows, that 10 years, that 15 years, it doesn't feel like a long time.
No.
It doesn't feel like a long time in the future. And my way of looking at things has always been, well, you count back the same amount of time. What were you doing then? And how long ago does that feel?
Yeah.
And you know that you're going to be doing the same. It's frightening sometimes. But
time flies by.
Yeah.
So if you were looking back over your career, is there somebody that stands out as a big influence on you?
Yeah, I mentioned them earlier on, actually. Neil Stanley and Chris Jackson were both managers of mine at the council.
Yeah.
Both were from private practice originally, so they brought up in their early careers, with the strict PQS environment as it was back then.
Yep.
And they brought that work ethic and focus on being correct into that workplace, and they influenced many people, I should imagine. Just many of my cohorts back then, they would say the same. But Chris particularly, for the whole of the 22 years worked, probably sat no more than 6 or 8 feet away from him, and we were very good friends, and I was that was one of the things that kept me there longer,
right,
was the relationships with those people. So that kept me there longer than perhaps
should have stayed.
You do, like I said before, you pick up little bits of things. And what surprised me actually was I spoke to him back end of last year, I think it was, just to catch up on Skype or whatever, and he said to me, so all that time we spent together, he said I learned so much from you. And he said that to to me, and he's 15 years older than me. Yeah. He was my kind of mentor. Yeah. And he said he learned things from me.
Well, that's the type. I mean, that's the you get from a good relationship, isn't it? It's not a one-way relationship ever. And I think if you've got those kind of people in your life, it does make certainly your work life easier. Absolutely. You've got someone you trust, and they trust you, and there's a good relationship there. You can get more stuff done because of that trusting relationship.
Yeah, exactly.
I think, I don't think we emphasise that enough in our day-to-day life, really. To have those strong, trusting relationships is really important for all of us, really. I've had too many toxic work relationships, if I'm honest.
Yeah. I think it's difficult, though, because the thing that binds you to other people is work.
Yeah, certainly in our industry.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And I think because we're in a commercial environment, their driver is to earn money for their company. Yeah. It is difficult.
It causes conflict. I mean, that's one thing I've certainly thought about a lot, is how to change the way we do the job to take the conflict out of it. But that's actually really difficult to do, because most contracts are set up with the lowest price winning the work for every part of it. So all the consultants, plus the contractors, plus the subcontractors. And when you're in that situation, it's a battle from day one, because you don't want to do too much, because you haven't bid to do too much. And that drives the quality, it drives the relationships, it drives the outcomes completely. And I think we need to change that somehow. And I was talking to Alan Palmer, who used to be at UC, he's now on the Cathedral Rebuild project, and he was talking about the way they've set that one up, which is it's kind of an open book, a cost plus approach that's managed
I've got sweats now you've said that. I'm nervous all of a sudden you mentioned cost plus.
But he said what he said about it is that because the way it's been set up, it's really collaborative, and everyone is working together, and they're sticking to the budgets, and they're sticking to the program, and they're giving the right quality outcomes. And it just seems to have been, I mean, it may be the group of people that's been involved in that project are particularly focused on the way they want to do the work, but it does seem that model is working quite well on that project. And I think if we could get a model that works more collaboratively than we currently have, I think we get a lot better outcomes on projects.
Yeah, unfortunately, the utopia, if you like, of having enough time, having enough budget,
yes. Having enough information to start.
Yeah, having a client that knows what he wants.
Yeah.
Sorry, clients.
Yes, but I mean, that is true. I think you need, if you've got an intelligent client, the project's a lot easier to run. If you've got and when I say intelligent, I mean somebody who understands the process, rather than, you can have a very intelligent client that doesn't understand the process, and then you have all sorts of issues.
But I think then if you have a client that doesn't understand the process, then it's incumbent on us professionals to educate the client and to help him along on that road. I think one of the biggest issues generally, and I'll take the current or the recent industry challenges out of it for a moment, is programming. And having a program that's realistic and not back-end driven. Because we all know that programs will slip for one reason or another. There is never enough float built in, and that end date never moves. Or if it moves, then everybody's up in arms about it, and it's a failure. Well, it's not a failure to achieve that date. It was a failure to recognise that you needed longer in the first place. Those lessons never get learned in some organisations, unfortunately, and we all say yes to things because we want to be
helpful.
Exactly, we want to be helpful. But saying you can do something in a time frame that you can't do it in is not being helpful.
No, that's true.
So, and then each individual part of the process, will lose time, will be able, and that then is a knock on to the other part. Then there's a knock on, and then before you know it, you've got a major issue with the program.
I think one of the things I've found that has changed over my career is that when I first started work, we'd wait till the architects had finished before we started doing our stuff, and the program allowed for that. Because we have to follow behind others. We need to provide some input in the process, but we don't need to finish on the same day. Now we need to finish our design on the same day as the architect, which means the coordination can't happen because we have to work while they're still changing stuff. And that causes conflict, and it actually delays the process. And, every project that I work on, I try and push our end date beyond the end of the architectural design to give us that opportunity to do the coordination. And sometimes you can get that in there, but a lot of the time it's that extra time is put there, but the architect uses it to change other stuff. So you never really get that overlap that you need to allow the coordination to happen. And you have the same pressure. We'll finish, and then a week later you've got to have done your quantities and done your valuation for the stage of the job. Well, that's not enough time, and you're starting earlier in the piece when things are still changing. So that we're building in failures.
Absolutely,
deliberately.
Yeah. And the end date from that part, the design part of the programme, is the going out to tender. You've already committed when you're going to go out to tender.
Yeah.
So we're squashed up against that, producing our documentation.
Yeah.
I used to work with a mechanical engineer at the council called Pete Ibbotson. Every single design meeting that we had, he referred to them themselves as tail end Charlies, because they just ended up getting, doing what the architects and following on from them.
Yeah.
And I says, wait a minute, Pete. I says, we come after you, so what does that make us?
Yeah.
But that is exactly what you just said there.
Yeah. Yeah, we need to try and find a way of resetting that, but it's very difficult because we're all time constrained, and every project's got hard deadlines, and clients don't want to move those. And unless you can show that there's a better outcome and it costs less money, takes less time overall, it's really difficult to get people to change their minds. But that's something we can talk about, but probably never change.
Carry on talking about.
So, look, just outside of work, what do you do to relax and recharge yourself?
Think about ways of relaxing and recharging yourself. I'm, by my own admission, not very good at that.
Right.
To my massive detriment.
Yeah.
One thing I do, I collect vinyl records, so I do enjoy trawling through record shops and picking up bits and pieces.
Like Penny Lane.
Yeah, although they're expensive and the condition's not great.
No, that's what I've seen.
But so wherever I go, I try to seek out a record shop and have an hour just trawling through that. And
what about holidays?
Holidays, I'm rubbish at taking annual leave. As
the perfect employee.
It has been said. When I do, I find that I tend to leave things till too late to book something, and then it's like, I can't do it now. I've got this meeting, I've got that meeting. Yeah. So I still haven't, after all these years, got it correct about, right, I'm going to book some time then when there's nothing happening then yet. There's nothing programmed. We know there will be, but there's nothing happening. Just book it and then work around it.
Yeah.
I'm very, very poor at that. So, but generally speaking, we did quite a lot of travelling when, I've been to quite a few places when we were back in the UK, got around a bit.
But not since you've been here?
Since I've been here, I've been to Fiji. It was nice to visit. That's one of those places when you're in cold, rainy Sheffield.
Fiji is paradise.
Would I ever get to visit a place like Fiji? So that's a good thing.
We've been there once. We definitely want to go back because it's just the lifestyle over there. It's difficult to get stressed because no one is stressed. Nothing happens fast. Yeah, it only takes a couple of days, and you realise there's no point in rushing. Because no one else is going to.
That's right, yeah. I've been to Australia a few times. Been a few places in Australia, some nice places there. Like going there. Yeah. Strangely, never a place. Well, we did think about Australia when we were looking to move abroad.
Yeah.
But for some reason, it just didn't click for us as somewhere that we wanted to live. And I think having visited it a number of times, we're kind of happy with that decision. It's great to go and visit, but I'm not sure I could.
I just don't like the fact that most things over there want to kill you.
Well, including Australians.
Yeah, including the Australians, especially us English. Especially when you correct them when they call us Poms. No, sorry mate, you're the Pom.
I wouldn't dare.
I've done that a couple of times, but only on the phone. So look, if you were looking back to your 20-year-old self, and you could give yourself a piece of advice, something that you think would have been useful to know back then, what would it be and why?
I would probably say, if I was 20, in 5 years' time, when you go on holiday to Tenerife, if that steak looks uncooked, it is.
Don't eat
it. That would benefit my life greatly. That would be advice, to be perfectly honest. being someone who, gives advice but is very poor at taking it, and I certainly don't listen to my own advice a lot of the time, is you don't have to work so hard. You can work hard, but you don't have to work so hard that it fundamentally affects how you are, how you feel.
I think that adage of working smarter, not harder, is something that we could all learn from. And, it's getting that. I talk about work-life balance, but a few people have said it's actually more of a blend rather than a balance. It's not, you don't separate the two, work and life, because, certainly for me, and I think from what you said for you, you are what you do for a living, and you need to get the blend between personal and professional right, so that you're not too much in one or the other. And that, something you only learn after a long time doing what you do, unfortunately. Now, when you first start work, I think my outlook, and I think your outlook as well, was we've got to impress everyone around me of how hard I work, so that they don't think I'm lazy and get rid of me. And then that just becomes a habit, and then your people around you expect you to do that because that's what you've always done, and it's really difficult to break that habit. So I think having that sort of assurance of yourself that if you do a good job, you don't have to work so hard because people will recognise you're doing a good job anyway.
I think the other side to that is, and I do like that description of, or using the word blend rather than balance, because balance does seem to conjure up an image of a perfect scale that's not moving, equal on both sides. Whereas I think, you just have to accept that it's going to be tilted towards work. Yeah. But you've got to have a means of blending in some kind of
outside work stuff
to do with work. But also with the work ethic thing and the working so hard and wanting to impress and not wanting to get anything wrong is more, my drive for an unachievable perfectionism through a lot of my career has been my main downfall. But you also then, when you're looking at other people, you can fall into the expectation that they have to do the same. Yeah, they need to be perfect as well. Yeah, but if you can't achieve that level of perfection, how on earth can they? Yeah. Why are you expecting them to be able to do it as well? So you have to sort of reel it in a little bit. You have to reel that back in and set realistic expectations of employees and yourself.
Yeah. I think that's right. If there's one thing I've learned is it's not the making the mistake that's the issue, it's what you do once you've made the mistake. And because we all make mistakes all the time, if you own up to it and try and come up with a solution or talk to your line manager or whoever it is and try and tell them this is what I've done, I think it's wrong, how do I get out of this, and what's the right thing to do, then usually that's well received. There are the few people out there that will shout at you because you made a mistake, but you don't have to work for them. You can always change. But I think that approach, and it's the same, if you're working for a client and you've made an error, it's the same with clients. If you go to them and say, look, we've just spotted this error and this is what we're doing to fix it, most of the time say that's fine. It's when you don't own up and leave it until somebody finds out later when it's become a massive problem, that's when there's an issue.
Or you just say, oh, it was a mistake, and you've got no thought about how to move forward from there to put it right.
Yeah. Outside of not having holidays and not really having a work-life blend, do you read books much?
I not as much as I used to, but I do. Yeah. Yes, I've been a big reader throughout my life, really.
Yeah. Are you a paper book reader or a Kindle reader?
It has to be a paper book. I just cannot get. I've tried. Yeah. It just doesn't work for me.
No, same here. I like the idea of turning a page and not just sliding my finger across the screen.
Exactly. But I think that tactileness is also part of the reason why I collect vinyl records as well, rather than just listening to digital music. Because music has been a big part of my life. Yeah. Sort of listening to, playing a little bit very badly. But the options you've got for listening to music, yes, you can press a button and it's there immediately and what have you. But you've not got the sleeve, you've not got, it's a sad, old, nostalgic thing, I'm afraid.
Not at all.
Of getting the record.
But it's a way of actually getting more out of the process, isn't it? The instant access.
I get something out of it that you can't get from
Spotify.
Exactly. Yeah. And look, Spotify is good. I'm not going to knock it. But that is actually,
So what are you reading at the moment?
At the moment, I am reading a great book, actually, by Tim Marshall it's called The Prisoners of Geography. Right. I've always been fascinated by politics and strategy of countries. And I think it's the first chapter, maybe the second chapter in this particular book, that was written, I think it was written about 8 years ago.
Yeah.
It focuses on countries and how the geography of that country's sort of impact their strategy and political landscape, as well as the actual the physical landscape affecting the political landscape.
Yeah.
And it speaks about the Ukraine and Russia, and I say it was about 8 years ago, and it's amazing detail that he goes into in predicting what could happen and why it's happening, and why Russia will never let go of that land. You know,
it's the food basket of Europe, isn't it? The grain.
It goes into all this sort of how there's a pathway through to Ukraine, and that's the only way you can get to the sea, because obviously there's Sevastopol. That they need to get to, and that's why Crimea was annexed. And then, you know, there's a lot of really interesting stuff in there, but it goes through lots of countries about, you know, it's got China and how why they do things the way they do them, and why they've done them for so long the same way, and it's really fascinating. So,
did he predict Donald Trump?
I don't think anybody could have predicted that.
To be fair, no, that's the thing. That was a shock to a lot of people.
That was one of those just what was happening to the world type moments, wasn't it?
Well, I think I heard somebody say that you don't always get the leaders you want, but you do usually get the leaders you deserve.
The frightening thing is of the numbers. The numbers that he managed, you know, whether or not he rightly won or not, you know, or whatever, the amount of people that did vote for him.
And the amount of people that still think he did a good job and still think that he was right about the pandemic, and just like, I know.
I think I try to balance the reading, because obviously that kind of reading's quite heavy, even though I do enjoy it, but I do read. I'm a big Stephen King fan, so I've got pretty much all his books, so I do like reading.
Me too, love his books. Terrify me, but I love them.
Well, the funny, the later books, the last few years have been less reliant on the horror, and it's gone more into a thriller type novels, but his characterizations
amazing,
superb. And
when I read it for the first time, it was truly terrifying. And the first film that they made wasn't so terrifying, really. Tim Curry really wasn't a scary person as it.
I think the effects suffered a little bit as well. It'd been 1990, they weren't quite up to the standards of today. But I think it is probably my favourite book.
It and Cujo. No, Cujo wasn't him. Cujo was him, wasn't it? Yeah, it was. I do like those horror books, and the thriller books is kind of my bag at the moment, I guess. And music you've mentioned a few times. Where's your musical taste set?
These days it's quite eclectic. When I was growing up, it wasn't. It was very narrow focused on rock music. Heavy rock particularly. A big fan of Queen.
Who isn't?
Well, there's a few out there.
But they don't really understand Queen, do they?
And that kind of developed into, you know, I do listen to a bit of heavy metal as well. Iron Maiden are one of my favourite bands. Marillion, really like them, always have. But latterly, you know, you kind of go back to things that you listened to or you heard when you were younger and thought it was rubbish because it wasn't cool to listen to them, and then you end up finding that actually I do get something out of that now. So a lot of 80s, I do listen to a lot of 80s stuff. Because it is a nostalgia thing and it reminds you of certain times and places, perhaps. But also, you just do appreciate what the music was for what it was, not that it was, you know, great words, lyrics, or great musicianship. It was just a good tune. And I think that's where around these days it's just, if it's a good tune, then I like it. But more often than not, it is rock tinged.
So if you could actually meet a particular musician or go and see somebody that you've never seen, who would that be?
I've been quite lucky. I've seen quite a lot. I've been to a lot of concerts in the last 30 years or so. I think one of the few downsides of being in New Zealand is that you don't get people coming out here as often as you would like, or at all in some instances. There's a band at the moment that, they're not new, they've been around a while, called Ghost, who I am desperate to go and see, and it looks like I will have to go abroad to see them, because at the moment they're not coming anywhere near. He's making a lot of money in America at the minute, so
why would you leave?
Exactly. So I would like to go and see them. I wasn't fortunate enough to see Queen when Freddie Mercury was alive. I went to the Freddie Mercury tribute concert in 1992 at Wembley. It was the remaining.
Who was singing? It was George Michael?
Well, there was lots of people there. There was George Michael, David Bowie, Robert Plant, Had a long list as long as your arm.
Yeah.
It was probably still to this day the best concert that I've been to.
I was very lucky. I went to see Queen Live Magic at Nebworth Park.
Oh, yeah.
Which was 200,000 people, I think, were at that concert. That was, it was just amazing.
Nice concert.
Yeah, took us 9 hours to get out the car park after the concert.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I went to a concert in 1990 at Nebworth as well, and that was Pink Floyd, Paul McCartney, Phil Collins, another long list of things. But again, there was 120,000 people there, and it was ridiculous.
Yeah, I think the toilets were not something you wanted to experience towards the end of that concert.
No. To be honest, I think when you're at the front, most people didn't even bother.
No. Yeah, let's not talk about that anymore. That's kind of, yeah. So, another thing, just sort of reflecting on, is there a particular historic figure that you'd like to meet?
I think there's quite a number of people through history who I think the curious person in me would want to know behind the scenes of major things, major incidents perhaps in the world that you'd think, well, I'm not a big person to idolise and put people on pedestals and that. At the end of the day, they're just people doing a job. Yeah. A lot of them in difficult situations or whatever. But I don't go in for the
heroes
for that heroes thing. No, not really. But someone like JFK, I think the Bay of Pigs. And all through that period where it's difficult for us to appreciate, certainly those that weren't around at that time, to appreciate how close the world came to ending.
Yes, that's a period of history where the Cold War was at its absolute peak, and you're right. The Cuban Missile Crisis is something my parents talk about. It's something that they were really genuinely scared about what was going to happen at that time.
Yeah, I've seen documentaries and I've watched the film about the 13 days. Yeah. But to actually speak to somebody who was there and understand what was actually going through his mind, I think would be
the world's biggest game of chicken, basically. He's going to blink.
That's what it sounds like. And to be honest, it probably will end up being that's exactly what it was.
Yeah, he's going to blink.
But so I think somebody like that.
Okay, that's good, that's cool. And just going back to the subject of travel, is there anywhere that you would really like to get to that you haven't been to yet?
Yeah, I think Canada. I've not been to Canada yet. And
are you a skier?
No, I'm not. Or at least I have been skiing. Yeah. I'm not sure anyone else would describe it as skiing. I've got dodgy knees. So that's it's just not comfortable.
No,
it's just not for me. But I do like mountains. Yeah, I do like the feeling of being on a mountain or near a mountain or mountains and lakes is my sort of, when I picture a quiet place, a serene place, that's what I think about. Yeah. So I think seeing those lakes and mountains of Canada would be pretty good. Obviously, we are not short on those in this country, which is great.
You can see some mountains out the window. So
exactly, yeah. So that is a great, it's a great thing to be able to see, and to live up in Pegasus and driving out. You can see the Southern Alps, and then at the start of winter when the snow's just coming on the top.
It's amazing. View. It is an amazing view. Yeah, I mean that's the thing. New Zealand's a great place for outdoors, and but unfortunately, myself and my wife, we're not great outdoors people. We like looking at stuff, but don't want to spend weeks walking down footpaths and being cold and uncomfortable all the time.
But I think that's a good thing. There's options, isn't there? There are shorter
ones you can do. A day trip's fine, but anything more than that, I want to be in my own bed at the end of the day. Yeah. Look, is there anything else you wanted to talk about today? Anything else that we haven't touched on?
I'm not sure, actually. I think that we haven't said anything about sport, have we?
We haven't talked about football. Should we talk about football?
How long have we been talking now? We're English, and we have not
mentioned football once.
Yeah.
Well, that's because I'm depressed.
I'm ashamed of myself. Well, yes. I can understand why you are, but I can't understand why I'm not shouting from the rooftops, because we've just been promoted back to the
Premier
League again.
Yeah, we'll be playing one another next season.
We will.
Yeah.
We will.
So you're Sheffield United. Yeah. So you're not the team that we did the double cup win over then?
No.
Not a Wednesday fan.
They're more Barnsley than Sheffield, I like to think. So
yeah. I like to think that Tottenham are more Middlesex than London.
No, in fact, they were They're playing in their playoff second leg after being 4-0 down to Peterborough this morning, but I don't know how they've gone.
No. So you're looking forward to be back in the Premier League?
Yes and no, of course. Because we're all realistic. We know how difficult it's going to be. We've got no money. We're up for sale. So if there are any sort of billionaires out there listening to this that would like to come and purchase Sheffield United, but Sheffield United is. If you could pick a team, everyone would pick the similar teams. You don't pick a team necessarily. I don't think, and it's they kind of where United were having a terrible time in the 80s. And you kind of, when you're at school, everybody's following big clubs and stuff. And I did follow Liverpool through because they were
they're winning everything. Yeah, they're winning everything, playing great football.
You always knew that you were a United fan. Going and watching them week after week in the doldrums, you do wonder why you're doing it.
Yeah.
So these times when they come along, you've got to enjoy it because we're realistic. I think as a set of fans, most of us. That we're not going to go in. We're not going to get to Europe and stuff. And
no, what you want to do is you want to, like we talked about before, see a team that's actually putting everything in to the game.
And that's always been the thing about United is if you can. We've had players who are not technically good. But you know that they'll put themselves about and they'll try their hardest.
I've seen some of the way that Sheffield United players put themselves about.
Oh, that's in the dim and distant past. Vinnie Jones only played with us for a bit.
But he taught everyone else what to do.
Yeah, so that is one of the other things that is...
Do you get up and watch the games?
Yeah.
Yeah, same as me.
I don't. I used to. I think when they're in Premiership a few years ago, I would watch it on delay because it's better watching it at 7 in the morning than 3 in the morning.
Yeah, I must admit, I did get up to watch the Man City game and regretted it, and equally regretted the Brighton game at the weekend. To be honest, that wasn't a good result. But I think that's the other thing that as a football fan, your expectations grow massively through the season if you're doing what we did all season. But then you look at what Man City did to Real Madrid. How the hell you can expect to beat a team that can do that to Real Madrid? We can't. There's no way we can.
And we got to the FA Cup semi-final this year, and then drawing Man City in the semis, and you just think, well, we did brilliant to get to semi-finals anyway. But you're still thinking,
it's only get to finals, one more game and we're in the final. Yeah,
we were never going to happen. No, they're never going to happen.
Well, they can put out their youth team and beat most Premier League teams, unfortunately.
Definitely. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. I mean, they talk about Guardiola being the greatest coach of all time, but to be honest, if you've got that group of players, how could you not be?
Well, yeah, but then you look at Chelsea, and they spent $600 million £600 million this season.
Yeah, and look where a lot of crap.
They bought the players that we were trying to get, but for more money.
Well, so you'd be grateful you didn't get them then.
Yes, exactly. Well, Mudryk doesn't look like an £80 million player to me.
No, but the price thing is... We had a player on loan last season, Morgan Gibbs-White, from Wolves.
Yeah.
And played great for us. He was really good. We were thinking, hopefully we can get him back or something. And Forest went up, paid $45 million for him. Yeah. He was on loan to us last season. And, it's... 45 million. He was good, but geez.
Is he that good? Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Well, he's good. He's a good player, but if you've got to pay that kind of money for that level of player,
But I think that's the English players, though, isn't it? There's a real premium on English players in the Premier League.
Yeah, because there's a great deal of them. But to be fair to Man City, they have got some. So like it's a Phil Foden that they've brought through, and they did play. Grealish that they've got. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think something's got to change for anybody to challenge Man City, really. I think they're so dominant.
Your Leicester's winning the Premier League is...
that was a blip. I think that's one of my favourite seasons in recent years, because it was nice to see Spurs come third in a 2-horse race. They really should have finished second that season, and we pipped them to it right on the last day. It's just like
said like a true brother.
Well, you've got to get your pleasure where you can.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. We haven't won any trophies this season, but I think we've played some exceptional football.
I must admit, when I've seen you play,
it's shown, the end of the season has shown that we just haven't got the squad depth. We lose a key player like Saliba, our central defender, and we've lost most of it. Well, a large number of games since then. And you look at no main striker really all season. Jesus isn't really a striker. But we've scored 80 goals this season, which is just an amazing return on goals. And it's because they've come from all over the pitch. We've got 3 players that scored 10 or more goals, 4 players that scored 10 or more goals, 2 that have scored 15 goals, So it's a team that's performed way above where it should have, I think.
Well, you robbed Ramsdale from us for a steal, didn't you?
He's turned out to be quite a good keeper, actually.
Oh, really? Really? You don't say.
He's just signed a new contract. Doubled his money.
Doubled his money. No wonder he went on strike for it.
Well, we picked up Trossard because he'd fallen out with the Brighton manager in the January transfer window, and he's turned out to be a real bargain as well, to be honest. And Jorginho from Chelsea, everyone was saying, "Oh, he's going to be shit," but he's actually done a good job for us. So Anyway, we could talk about that for hours, football, really and I think we should talk about it next year.
Yeah, that's cool. No,
Maybe not. Well, look, thanks, Chris. It's been great talking to you. I've really enjoyed it, and great to talk to you. And we'll catch up with you soon.
Yeah,
thanks, mate.
Steve.
Thank you for listening to my podcast, A Penny for Your Thoughts, with me, Steve Penny. I hope you've enjoyed today's conversation, and I look forward to sharing my next conversation with you in the future. Thank you.